Reprendre votre thérapie, d'aller en partie. Votre fils a quand même...
Welcome. I'm your host, and this is uNcomfortable. Typically, this is where I'd take the opportunity to relay some facts or anecdotal references to the subject I'll be covering tonight. However, in my opinion, there is nothing I could tell you that would prepare you for what you are about to hear. Modulation has been added to the voices of my guests to protect their privacy. We have with us tonight John, and John is not his real name. We are going to refer to him as John, though, to protect his anonymity, and much like John Doe. So, John, thanks for being with us tonight. I appreciate you inviting me into your home, and we have some really interesting stuff to talk about, don't we?
Yeah.
So, if you would, I guess just go start with any kind of precursors to your first major experience with this. Is there anything leading up to?
Yeah, there were a couple of things. We gather every year, my hunting group, my hunting party, family members and friends. And throughout the preseason, we had noticed odd things on the property that we hunt on. Noticed, rock formations that didn't make sense, stick piles that almost resembled a fence, and just odd things. I mean, nothing really made sense, but we didn't really think much about it at the time.
So, for the listeners, over the course of this recount, we're going to be talking about two specific different areas, correct?
Correct.
So this is the first property.
Yeah.
And this is not your homestead. This is a area that you hunted, correct?
Yeah, this is a state land property.
Okay. And this is the entire run of this story takes place in, of all places, southwestern Michigan, correct?
That's correct.
And that's a little too close to home.
Yeah, for me it is.
So, all right. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, you're fine. So we gathered for our annual hunting party gathering, and I had told everybody that my daughters and I had encountered several different things that they needed to watch out for. They kind of thought I was joking. They thought it was not serious. They thought I was trying to scare them, and they found out a very different story. They found out that what I was talking about was real, and in fact realer than I thought at the time, enough so that it terrified most of them.
And what was that?
Okay, so to go back from there, my daughters and I had been doing, around July that year, had been working on a food plot. And so I'm about a mile and a half, roughly, back in a swamp. We have to wear waders to get out there, so it's not easy. It's not a place the average person goes. In fact, I've never seen another hunter out there, ever. And during that time frame of working on this food plot, my daughter called me over and said, "Dad, look at this footprint." And I thought she was joking. I thought she was messing with me. And so I told her, I said, "Look, take your waders off. I want to see your foot." And she's like, "Dad, I'm not messing with you. I'm serious." I said, "No, take your waders off, because it's so mucky out there. I'm going to see mud." and foot was clean. So I said, no, take your sock off. So she did. And again, foot was clean. So I started looking at it more and realized this has substantial size. I mean, this is way bigger than my foot. And as we continued on, I started looking further, and there's a left foot. And then 6 foot away or so, there's a right foot. And then there's another. And, I mean, this is mucky ground. And so I tried to recreate the stepping pattern, and I couldn't do it. And then even running, I couldn't do it.
Because of the length of the stride?
Yeah. The length of the stride, but it was also stepping over stuff. I mean, this is it's mucky, but there's logs, there's ferns growing out there. So it's not easy to walk through at all. I mean, we take machetes when we go.
Really? It's that thick?
Yeah. So, I mean, you can see over it all. So at that point, I was really uneasy. I'm very confused. I pulled out my phone, took my gloves off because I had, gloves on to pull the brush and I set it down next to him and took pictures, just so we had some kind of proof because I knew nobody was going to believe this.
And what would you guess? I mean, I'm sure you don't have a ruler or a tape measure out there with you, but what would you guess the length and the width of the prints to be?
Boy, I think the width was, I mean, compared to my mechanic's glove, the width was probably 2 times the length of the glove and a little more because I kind of, just a lot of it was pushed in because of the mud. So, it came back in around it a little bit. And then maybe the width would be maybe 1.5 times the glove on width.
So pretty substantial size.
Yeah.
Bigger than your foot.
Oh, yeah, way bigger than my foot.
Way bigger than your daughter.
Yeah, by far, yeah. So at that point, I was pretty nervous. So I put both them on lookout duty, and I finished up what I needed to do in the spot, which wasn't a lot. I mean, I left a lot undone, and we got out of there. And then about a week later, two of us went back again to go work on some other stuff because we were kind of working on a whole food plot thing and clearing out a lot of the brush in the area. And we came upon a deer, but it wasn't where you would think a dead deer would be. We noticed that, well, first we saw the blood dripping on the leaves, and looked up, and the deer was in the tree. And I've heard of, cougars or whatever, getting a hold of deer, but we don't see those here in Southwest Michigan.
Right.
But this deer was shredded. It was ripped to pieces. And as my daughter will probably tell you later, when we knocked one of the back legs down, the femur was snapped in half, and you could physically see handprints on either side of the leg in the muscle where something had grabbed it, gripped it, and broken in half.
So you could literally see the indentations from fingers.
Yes.
Pressed into the meat to snap the femur.
Yeah. We stood there for a while, looking at it and just trying to understand what we were looking at. And that was the nearest thing we could figure is those were literally handprints on either side of the leg. So.
And how old do you think the kill itself was?
Within a day or a day and a half.
Still relatively fresh.
Yeah. There wasn't a lot of smell. There wasn't really any decay. It wasn't a lot of flies. So.
What about on the ground? Did you notice? There probably wasn't snow on the ground at this time, was there?
No. This would have been later into July-ish.
So anything that would have been pulled up would have probably soaked up into the ground.
Yeah, for the most part, yeah. But there were some like skin and hair and that kind of stuff on the ground. So that certainly got our attention a little more, And then the next thing happened a little bit later in the year. We had gone out to check on the area again, do a little more work, and we noticed we heard something running ahead of us, and we quickly went up over the hilltop to see what it was. We did not see what it was, but we noticed a very strong odor that was pungent. It was just really bad. And as we got closer, my daughter noticed that there was something coming down from the tree. and it was foamy. And initially I thought maybe some kind of like sap or something along those lines, and it hadn't rained, you know, it hadn't previously rained or anything like that. So as we got up to it, we realized that there was urine coming down the tree, and it was about eye level to me. I'm 5'9". So
Wow.
So we just kind of looked at it, and at that point we decided that we weren't going to continue on. We were just going to go back to the truck and head home. So
prior to this, your knowledge on Bigfoot or Sasquatch, what level of education did you have?
not a lot. To be honest with you, I probably looked at anybody that talked about it as they're making this up. It's a joke. They're looking for attention. You know, that would be, I mean, I just didn't really think it was a serious thing. I didn't put a lot of stock into it, you know.
And at what point, over the course of what you've just told me, at what point, I would imagine probably when you see the footprints in the mud, is that when it kind of kicked in for you that this is something that we're dealing with that shouldn't be?
Yeah, you know, for me, I didn't want to believe it right away. It took a little more. I had the photographs on my phone, and I had stopped into a friend of mine that owns a local store. It's where I get a lot of my supplies for hunting and that. And in visiting him, he had asked me how my season looks this year. How's the deer look? You know, am I gonna have good season? Am I seeing any big bucks and stuff? And I told him, I didn't even say much. I just simply said, you know, things are weird this year. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, they're just weird. And he leaned across the counter and he looked at me and he said, have you seen Bigfoot? And I said, you know what? I'm leaving. I'm out of here. You know, you're making fun of me. And I hadn't told him anything at all. And so I walk out the door of the store and I'm kind of mad. And he runs out, grabs me and says, no, come back inside. Let's talk. You don't understand. And I said, no, you're right. I don't understand. And I'm not going to talk to you. And he said, no, come back inside. Well, it took him a bit. My wife talking to him too. And he got me to go back inside and he said, you know, I'm an anthropologist by trade. I went to school to be an anthropologist, but you know, I run this because it's our family store. And he told me that, you know, there's a lot of sightings in Berrien County and in Cass County, Michigan. And I said, that's not true. You know, like I just couldn't believe it. And I thought he was making fun of me. And then he asked me, you know, do you have photographs or anything of any of the stuff that I had told him about, you know, the footprints, the rocks being piled up and the sticks, which I'll have to explain because that's really unique.
Yeah.
And I did. And so I showed him all that. And I showed him the footprints. And of course he asked me, he says, so did you get plaster Paris castings? And I'm like, yeah, because everybody carries plaster Paris in their backpack, you know? And, you know, he's like, no, really, you know, you should have gone back and got them. But I didn't, you know, because at the time it's not something I'm really worried about.
Right.
But, you know, that right there, that conversation with him kind of put it in perspective for me. And it made me start to think that maybe there's something to this. Maybe this is real. So that's kind of
the bizarre synchronistic idea that somebody in your small bubble of people
yeah
is actually investigating this as a maybe not as a job, but as a serious researcher.
Yeah, he actually told me that he as a hobby he goes on different investigations, and when something happens, like, you know, somebody has a dog come up missing or they find something, an animal, you know, shredded or something like that, he will sometimes investigate that. So yeah.
Any idea on where he would get his information from?
No, I didn't know.
I wonder if he was associated with, you know, not necessarily the BFRO, but a organization that would take the counts from witnesses.
Yeah, I'm not sure. We never really got into it that deep. So yeah, the stick structures though, those are really unique. I would find maybe broken pine trees, piled up around trees. The problem was that wasn't a pine tree. It might be an oak tree. And the nearest pine tree is 100 yards away or 50 yards away or something. The sticks, it was obvious that they were pulled in, and these were large branches. Where we entered the swamp at, we actually go back on like this little finger of land that goes out and go onto the swamp. And at one point, there was a whole bunch of sticks all piled up, almost like a fence to say, stay away from here. And we tore it down, and went back, and it was built back and bigger. And so that was just...
what was the duration of time from the time you had torn it down to the time you would have gone back to get it, see it up again?
I think that was about 3 or 4 days. So it
was
was
relatively quick.
Yeah. Obviously, something or somebody, at the time we thought maybe it was a person trying to say, no, we're hunting here. But it, again, some of the events that happened later proved to be totally different. So,
wow. So any further congress with the gentleman at your store?
No.
As far as...
No, we never got a chance to talk anymore about it.
In your hunting property, you found a shredded deer.
Yep.
How far would you say some of the parts were thrown up into the tree? Can you make a guess?
The leg quarters that we could reach, we were able to get a big stick and grab. So that was probably within 15 foot. The other ones were a little bit higher that we couldn't reach, like the back. There was a rib part that was actually up around the tree, around the base, not the base of the tree, but the trunk of the tree, but just higher up. Yeah. So that was maybe up around 20, 25 feet.
And what are you thinking at this point?
I didn't know what to think. Here we have this shredded deer, in pieces, and just didn't know what to make of it. The whole time this was all going on, like I said, it was something that we were not wanting to believe. These things are happening. We're finding these things. There's got to be a reason for it. There's got to be an explanation. And then there just wasn't.
Well, the whole thing of the urine coming down the tree, that is something that if anybody that listens to this is into the subject matter as much as I am, that is something that you have not hardly ever, if ever, heard related into a story. And I imagine that would be pretty easy to pass up in an area if you're not looking for it.
It would be easy to pass, but the smell was so intense.
So that pungent odor that you were talking about before came from the urine.
Yeah.
When you were there right beside it, it was...
strong.
Okay.
It was very strong. That's what got our attention. We heard it. We heard something running. Didn't know what it was, but that odor, we were drawn to that, and you couldn't mistake it for anything.
Now, when you heard the running, I mean, you've been a hunter. You have dogs. You've seen deer run past. Are you able to discern whether or not whatever's moving ahead of you is bipedal?
This was definitely bipedal. It was heavy. Whatever it was very heavy. And then it went through the land and then entered the swamp. And at that time, it was making a lot of commotion. And to explain, to put that swamp in perspective, you have to go out there with a machete. You're not gonna, if you don't have a trail to get from point A to point B, you're not gonna get through. I mean, obviously the deer do. They're able to maneuver a lot easier than you and I, but this thing was tearing down trees.
You could hear hear destruction in the wake of this.
Yes, very much so. And that's what that got our attention. That's why we went running over the hill. Like, what is that? That's got to be a massive deer. We wanted to see it, and I don't believe it was a deer.
But were you able to recognize like where it went through? Did you see the fresh breaks? And
honestly, we never went that far. When we saw the urine on the tree, we kind of made the decision that we were just going to head back to the truck.
And so both of your daughters were with you at that time?
No, that was just one of them.
Just one.
Yeah.
And what was her response to Because you've had your daughters go out hunting with you.
Oh yeah, they're both avid hunters.
So what would her age have been at that time?
Oh, I'm sorry, 13, 14.
And she recognized that something was off.
Yes. Yeah. They were both younger. I'm terrible with ages. I have 5 kids.
Well, at some point, I'd like to bring your daughters in and get their accounts as well. So,
is that okay?
Yep, you're good. All right, so if you would, let's go back to your dad's account of you being out there and finding the urine stream on the tree.
Honestly, that day when we went over the hill, when we heard the running, that's the whole thing with the swamp. That's kind of why my dad likes hunting out there, because with it being as swampy as it is, everything is connected by that water. So when something's moving, you can almost feel it in like the muck and everything, those vibrations.
Interesting.
So when it was running, it was so heavy, you could feel the thud while it was running. And going back to the urine, though, when we went over the hill, I actually looked at my dad, and I thought he farted or something, because the smell was just so bad, you couldn't get past it. And as we made our way down and we found that, seeing the height that it was, and like you couldn't get within 5 to 6 feet of it without just wanting to, puke or cover your face in some way to mask that in some way, shape, or form. But seeing that and looking at my dad and seeing the horror on his face, and like I've never seen my dad scared, and I could see how uneasy he was, and I wanted to go home. I did not want to be there. Like we'd found other things, and that did it for me.
Was there at any point leading up to this, or any of your other experiences, John, have you ever had an overwhelming sense of dread, or a feeling like something was imposing a feeling of you shouldn't be where you're at? Something that you couldn't really put your put words to?
Prior to this, no. Prior to this, I've backpacked all over the United States. I've hunted all over the place. Not really afraid of anything in the woods. Have never had a feeling that anything was hunting me or could hurt me out there. Now, I feel very different.
With Tim Hortons 2 Hot Breakfast Sandwiches for $6 deal, you can mix and match your favorites. Mix and match between savory sausage or naturally hickory smoked bacon. Mix and match between an English muffin or flaky biscuit. Any 2 served with a freshly cracked egg and melted cheese. You can even mix and match how you share it. 1 for you, 1 for them, 2 for them, or 2 just for you. There's no wrong way to mix and match this tasty deal. 2 breakfast sandwiches for just $6. It's time for Tim's. Limited time at participating U.S. restaurants. Single item at regular price. Modifications and tax extra. Additional terms apply.
And what about your take on it? How do you feel? Are you comfortable with going back out in the woods, or?
Personally, I haven't been out there since I was 14 years old. 14, 15.
Not since that. Not
since finding the deer and the urine and seeing the fence lines of sticks, and it just, I've never seen anything like that before. And, growing up, you watch documentaries on things, and it's like, oh, okay, and then you experience something like that firsthand, and, it's stuff you don't talk about, because thinking about it gives you the chills. Like I've described it to people as living in a horror movie scene. Like when we found that deer, you hear the dripping, and it's a sunny day, and it's like, there's no way, like, where's this coming from? And you look up, and there's a deer in a tree. And you find a femur that, under so much stress and pressure, the muscles and tissue formed up through the grip in the hands and snapped a bone like that. Your femurs, it takes pounds and pounds of pressure to break. And it snapped it like it was a toothpick. So, no, I've not been out there since I was 14, 15 years old. And I personally, if I'm ever asked to go back out there with my dad, we better be walking back to back, because he's got my front and I've got his back. I don't want any direction to not be covered.
When you heard it going through the woods,
Mm-hmm.
what can you compare that to what was going on in your mind? What were you trying to picture in your mind as far as what was making those noises?
In my mind, I was trying to believe that it might be a deer or, something of some kind of size to make that feeling in the ground or just that kind of commotion. But I mean, when I've hunted my whole life with my dad, and when any animal comes in, it isn't wanting to be heard. It doesn't walk with a stomping or a, hey, I'm here kind of sense. It's quiet. It's stealthy. You've got to be looking for it to see it before it could be standing in front of you. You looked there 2 seconds ago, it wasn't there. You look there now and it is. With this, it wasn't trying to hide itself. It wasn't making itself presentable in the way to be seen, but it wasn't trying to not knock down trees or not run with a light step.
For both of you, do you think that display was intended to catch your attention and to scare you, intimidate you?
I think it's intended to scare anything that's in its path. It's like it feels it's big, and it is the predator. You're in its path, and that's really unfortunate for you.
Yeah, and without getting ahead of myself, something I'm sure we'll talk about in a little bit, I think it was certainly intended to say, I'm here, and this is my domain, and you don't belong here. So not to sound weird, but the urine on the tree is just, it interests me so much because, as I've told you before, I've listened to hundreds of hours of testimonies and accounts, and a lot of them, they'll talk about the smell, they'll talk about the pungent odor, but never once have I ever heard of actually finding the stream of urine. And then being taller than you at 5'9", and I imagine it was 2 heads higher than you at the time, that you'd have to have a pretty hefty stream to get up a tree that far. That's what I told her. I said I'd have to be aiming at my face, and I still don't think I could get that high.
Be peeing in your mouth before you got to where that was.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And it was still foamy.
It was still foamy. It had just done it.
So I don't mean to interrupt you, but while I have the thought in my head, from the time that you found the foaming urine on the tree to the time you heard the freight train going through the tree limbs, is that all like just following right into itself? The one thing right after another,
mm-hmm.
or?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why we, like I said, during our hunting party where we all get together before opening day, that was just one of the things I talked about with the group.
How was that received?
They laughed. They said, "Oh, we're fine." Even my wife, who had, we were coming home, we're telling her all this stuff. Really just thought it was a big joke. So, which led into opening day.
Yep.
A day we'll never forget.
Mm-hmm.
Now, daughter number 1, any other experiences?
The only other experience I had was I was going out to my car one morning before school to get some out of it, and I actually had just let my Rottweiler outside, and she was barking. She does it every morning. I didn't really think much of it. Continued our way outside, and as I made my way towards my car, I heard a rustle in our fence line. And we have 2 ways in and out of our driveway, and it was closer to the farther one. There's like a little forest line there, and I just kind of looked up at it, and I noticed this. There were 2 red eyes, and I had my phone on me, and I kind of lifted it up and shined it towards it, and they got brighter, and it just sent a chill down my spine, because as I looked at it, it looked as if it was crouching, and then it slowly, the eyes just got taller and taller and taller, and I panicked, turned right around, went right inside, and went right to my dad's bedroom, and I said, "Grab your gun, there's something outside." And I did not follow him outside to see what it was. And he didn't see it. By the time he got out there, he said he didn't see what was there, but yeah, I never forgot it. And to this day, I will actually avoid that tree line. I don't like to go to it during the day. I really don't go near it at night. So. And
that's your new homestead property. This was not it.
No, this is actually so where my dad hunts is about half hour from our home here, and so yeah, to see something that might be related to our past experiences on our home property really terrified me.
Well, there's something, and since you were out, I'll bring this up while you're still on with us. So you guys were out working on a flute plot, and if I remember right from the phone call we had, you were putting out corn and stuff like that.
Not corn. We were planting.
Oh, okay. So there's things called a habituation, and typically that term is used when a person or a family is leaving food or gifts for these creatures to elicit a response, to get something back, or to possibly make themselves more apt to being able to see them. And first told me about that experience, I couldn't help but think that being only a half hour away, if they interpreted your food plot as a gift to them, it might make sense that they made a half-hour trek to your property.
Yeah, it was. We've had a few occurrences here at the house, which I don't understand at all. So, yeah, I mean, it's possible, but
I'll be honest. I've never driven out into this area. I've been on all sides around it, but never down this area. I was really surprised at how much wooded area you have through here, and a lot of hills, a lot of valleys.
Yeah, there's some river bottom area,
and I hate the term, but it looks squatchy.
Yeah.
So back to daughter. You pulled out your phone. I assume you meant that you turned your flashlight on your phone.
I
raised the screen.
I actually was shaking so bad. The only thing I did was I turned the screen on, it lit up, and I was like, okay, that's enough. I didn't want to take my eyes off it long enough to the point where I looked down and I looked up and it might possibly be on top of me.
And you said that as soon as you raised your phone, that the eyes became brighter.
They got brighter. It was like, almost like when you take a picture of a dog and when that flash hits its eyes, it turns red or it glows and it captures that flash. It got brighter, just faintly, but enough so that as it started to stand up, it was well above my head, and I didn't want to try to possibly take it on. I just wanted to get away.
How far do you think that she was away from that?
It's about 20, 25 yards.
When you saw the eyes, did it, obviously you've hunted for a long time with your dad. You know what eye shine looks like. You know what red eye looks like when you take a photograph of somebody, and you see an illumination from behind the lens. When you saw those eyes looking at you, did you see that? Did you see illumination with depth from behind, like the back of the eye, or did it just look like glowing red eyes?
It just looked like it was glowing. I don't know if my phone had enough light to it. I mean, it was like one of those little flip phones, but it definitely didn't move. And the fact that it just stared at me, and as it got taller and its eyes were totally fixed on me,
Did you notice any blinks, or did you notice any swaying back and forth as if it was having a hard time standing still? Or?
No. Nope. It was from the moment it was crouched, it was a slow stand, and it never moved. The eyes never moved. Not that I can remember, and that could just have been the fact that I was scared out of my mind. But
and what's interesting is I went out looking for it, and went with a flashlight. And my neighbor, he's up. He's more nocturnal than he is, up during the daytime. And he told me that something had just run through the fence row between us and out the back of his property. So that verified to me that whatever she saw was real. Something was there.
Something was there.
Mm-hmm. He never got to look at it, but he could hear it. So it was pretty scary.
This is insane. All right, let's move on. Where are we going next?
I think opening day. I think that's what you're.
Let's give a little bit of a time frame. How long ago was this?
Oh, it's about 7 years ago. Yeah.
Okay.
So, as I told you, I had told all my buddies and my dad to be on the lookout. Something wasn't right. We went out that morning. We pretty much leave our truck because of the long walk we have in. We leave about 4:30 in the morning. So we're going in. It's very dark. And so there was my dad, my brother-in-law, and 2 other friends out there with us that day. And so we leave my dad. He's older, so he can't walk in as far. So we drop him off. My buddy's brother, he goes in a different direction into the property, but he's not very far from us at all. And then we dropped off my buddy at his spot, at his tree stand, and then my brother-in-law and I continued on into the swamp where we hunt together. And my dad, I had just gotten into my tree stand, just got situated. It's still quite dark. And it takes me about an hour and a half to walk in. So it's a bit, and he's calling me, and I answered the phone. He said, there's some guy walking around out here that's just busting through the thick stuff, in a full ghillie suit kind of thing, but it's a big guy, and he's not using a flashlight. And I said, what do you mean? And he goes, it's just a big guy. I said, well, was he on the trail? He goes, no, he went right through the thicket. I said, Dad, nothing can go through that thicket. I couldn't walk through that thicket. And he said, no, this guy walked right through the middle of that thicket. And I said, well, did you see him? He goes, well, when I shine my flashlight at him, he took off running. But it looks like a big guy. And so about that time, I'm getting another call coming in, and it's my other buddy, and that we dropped off second after him. So let me answer the phone, Dad, because he's calling me. So I did, and he said, man, there's something big just ran at me from your dad. He said, I think I got a big deer behind me. And we were just kind of chatting about it. I said, well, he said it's a guy. And he goes, well, if it's a guy, he's back in the swamp behind me. Because the way he had his tree stand, the swamp is to his back. And it's about shoulder deep out there. And behind him.
As far as the swamp goes, you mean the depth of the swamp?
Yeah, behind him there. We've unfortunately been through there tracking deer before, so it's deep. And he said, if it's a guy, he's got to have, ridiculous waders on. There's no way it's a guy. So, well, that's what Dad said. So I said, well, let's get ready here and, wait till light and see what happens. And maybe if it's a deer, it'll sneak in behind you and you'll get a chance at it. So we're starting to break light a little bit, but it's not light enough to where if you're looking at something, you can see it. But if you look away, you might see something in the corner of your eye.
So twilight. Yeah.
And man, that's when everything blew up for us. We hear a scream that I'll never forget. It actually did it twice. And, I didn't know what it was, but it was loud. I could hear it from where I was, and it was piercing. My buddy is calling me at this point. he said that this thing had snuck up right behind him. He didn't even see it in the swamp and started screaming at him. And when he jumped up, he said he about jumped out of the stand. But when he jumped up, he said the thing had turned, gone back into the swamp, made a circle, and he could hear it running towards my brother-in-law and I through the swamp. My brother-in-law is calling me. I said, shit, I gotta go. He's calling me. So he is he's a firefighter. So he has a really bright flashlight. And when it's light, we can see one another. And so I could see his flashlight come on. And he tells me, he said, I don't know what that thing is, but it's taking down trees. It's coming between you and me. It's walking fast, and it's taking down trees. I can see treetops falling. And I'm just like, I don't even know. I don't know what to think. I said, okay, I'm going to get off the phone. Let's see if it walks past me so that we can get a look at it. We can identify this thing. So he shut his light off. I could hear it coming. Like I said, this is swampy water. And like my daughter said earlier, that it's so mucky and it's like a bog. So when something's walking, you can feel it. You can feel it in your tree that you're sitting in. And so I could feel the vibration. And so this thing comes into view and I see it. It's 50 yards away from me. It's walking on two legs. It's huge. This is a big, hairy looking being. Now it's dark, so I couldn't see hair for sure, but it looked like just like a draping mat coming down. Walking, broadside to me, mad as can be. And then I noticed that there was a tree that had a limb that was about eye level to it. Now, this thing took its arm and did like a roundhouse swing at it and hit it with its forearm and broke the tree limb, sheared it right off, which blew my mind. And then continued walking out of sight.
Now you said it was mad as hell.
It was not happy.
What was the indication to you that it was not happy? What was it doing that made you think that?
It just the way it walked. It looked like a kid that had just had a temper tantrum. Big, heavy steps. It wasn't trying to hide itself. It was basically saying, I'm here.
Making a point.
Yep. Heavy steps, splashing water, swinging its arms. It just looked bad. So it ended up continuing to walk out of sight. And I've had people ask me, why didn't you shoot it? Well, one, I'm not going to shoot it. It's not a deer. It's not whatever that is season. And then the other thing is, why didn't you take a picture with your camera? I'm standing there in my stand with my phone in my hand. And to be honest with you, at the time, I didn't think about it. It never even crossed my mind. I think I was in complete shock.
Trying to process it, what you were seeing, let alone thinking about doing something about it.
Yeah, I'd never seen anything like that. Never in my life. I never thought I'd have seen anything like that. About 9 o'clock, my dad contacts me and says, I'm leaving. I'm heading home. And, this is a diehard hunter. This is a guy that doesn't leave until it's dark. He'll come in the dark and leave in the dark. And about 9:30, my buddy that had it sneak up behind him, he contacts me and says, I'm terrified. My brother already left, and I'm leaving too. And again, these are diehard hunters. My dad has never gone back to get a stand to this day. He said, I don't even care. It's not worth it. And it terrified him. And he hunted one more year and said, I don't need to be in the woods. So it had that much of an effect on him. My buddy, who had it sneak up behind him, to this day will not walk out in the dark, and he won't stay out till dark. He waits till it's breaking daylight to walk in the woods, and then comes out before it's too dark to see. His brother has never returned to the area other than to get a stand. So those guys are done, and we have other friends that have said they won't go out there anymore either because of it. So these are guys that at one point were making fun of us, and then turned around and they're so scared they won't go back.
What about you?
My brother-in-law and I, we still hunt out there, but not like we did. We were always out there during bull season, all the way through gun. all the way through black powder and then back into bow again. And now we hunt it during gun. I just, I'm a good shot with my bow, but I don't think I stand a chance against that with my bow. So with a gun, I feel like I have a standing chance, maybe. but yeah, later that morning, about 10 o'clock or so, I shot a doe that was coming through the area. And after I got her, I got down and walked over to not where the deer was, but where it had walked through. And as I walked over, I looked at the tree limb that it broke down. I could probably touch the tree limb with my fingertips if I put my arm up.
And again, you're 5'9".
I'm 5'9", and that was about eye level to it, to put it in some kind of size perspective. So that sent chills down my spine. And you asked the question if I hunt out there anymore.
We will continue with this family's experiences in part 2 of Opening Day on the next episode of uNcomfortable